Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Get married and have babies because you owe us grandkids. After that, I'm looking at the nutrition facts, not stocking the shelves. And after that, your grandmother made the wraps, so I deserve them. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen slips on a banana peel. What is this, Mario Kart? So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Get married and have babies because you owe us grandkids. I'm a 38-year-old woman. I have a great career, a loving boyfriend who's 31, great pets and friends. I have never ever wanted kids. 5 years ago, I ended a relationship with a man named Jason, name changed, who I thought wanted the same things I did. We had been together for 2 years in 2015. We had traveled together, read comics, play video games, and do all kinds of fun things. I had always been honest with Jason that I never wanted kids. He told me he didn't either. Then, in the summer of that year, I began to notice changes in him. He would talk about how great our friends' kids are. He'd try to get me to spend time with his nephews, even though I wasn't close to them. He also began talking to my parents way more than usual. Then, one evening, he said he wanted to have dinner with my whole family. I found this a bit strange, as I don't often spend time with my family, but for him, I agreed. We were having dinner, my parents and siblings, my brother and sister were there. Then he dropped a bomb on me. He got down on one knee and said, "I love you. I want you to be the mother of my children." What the actual heck was the first thing that came out of my mouth? We hadn't talked about getting married, much less kids. I never wanted kids and wasn't ready for marriage. I took him to another room and asked him what the heck he was thinking. He dropped another bomb and told me he had been talking to my parents about us getting married and starting a family. Let that sink in. He talked to my parents, not me, about our future. He said he had asked my dad's permission, before he asked for my consent. I was furious. All this was obviously meant to pressure me into saying yes. My mother, being nosy, walked right into the room we were in and asked what was wrong and why I had not said yes. I told her and the whole family that they needed to leave. When they left, I tore Jason a new one. I asked him how dare he assume that I was going to marry him and have kids with him when I had made it very clear that I did not want those things. He told me he was hoping that I would grow up and want something meaningful. He had the gall to act like I was the bad person in all of this. I threw him out, and the following day, I ended the relationship for good. My parents were upset at me. My mom cried about how she had been looking forward to getting grandkids from me and how I had let her down. My siblings, too, told me that I made a huge mistake by letting such a nice guy go. My dad actually told me to apologize to him. Their behavior told me that my desires and consent didn't matter to them one bit. They just wanted me to follow the same life script that they did. Till today, I haven't forgiven them. Mostly because they still think that they and my ex were right. My current boyfriend and I have been together for 3 years. He and I share the same passions, and he has had a vasectomy, so I feel much more secure when he says that he doesn't want kids. My parents and siblings are no longer a part of my life. I hardly ever call or see them, and I'm happier for it. I never spoke to Jason again, though he did try to reach out to me. He maintained contact with my parents for some time, hoping that they had forced me to change my mind. I still believe that what he did was a scummy, to say the least, but I bear him no ill will, and I hope he's happy. What would you say if your parents put you in a situation like this? Please let us know.
If they want grandbabies so bad, maybe Jason should have some with grandma. Bow chicka wah wah.
I'm looking at the nutrition facts, not stocking the shelves. There have been a few times when people have stopped me to ask if I work there, but I've always just been able to say, no, sorry, and that's always the end of it. But today, that wasn't the case at all. This is one of those ordeals that never actually happens in the real world, or so I thought. This is what actually happens when things get out of hand. So a bit of background about me. I'm a bodybuilder/powerlifter, and nutrition is very important to what I do. Whenever I go shopping, I like to check the nutrition labels on ingredients and foods I'm interested in. That way, I can eat enough to not be hungry without sacrificing flavor and still fitting it into my daily calorie intake. As you can imagine, I will check multiple different versions of the same ingredients in an aisle and put them back as I search for the best option. Well, earlier today, I went on a pretty big restock for the house. I also found a bunch of new recipes that I want to try, some of which called for some ingredients I don't work with often. For the most part, the store wasn't too busy, and nobody really bothered me as I walked up and down each aisle. I also had some earbuds in and my phone out, with my shopping list on it. Keep in mind, I'm also wearing a tank top and sweatpants, which you're probably not going to get away with wearing as a grocery store employee. As I'm looking through spices in the baking aisle, I hear someone yelling over my music. It was kind of surprising since I listened to it pretty loud. So I took out an earbud and looked around, and this lady just said to me,
"Can't even believe they let employees wear those stupid things."
I cut her off and said, "I wouldn't know, because I don't work here." This seemed to upset her greatly as she got really aggressive when she responded by saying,
"Don't you lie to me. I've seen you stocking the shelves. I'm a paying customer, and you need to help me right now."
I'm a very easygoing guy, but when a random stranger speaks to me like this, I'm not gonna put up with it. So I said, "I don't have to do crap, especially if you talk to me like that. Get lost." She lost something, that's for sure. She yelled,
"Excuse me? How dare you?"
I just turned to walk away at that point. All of a sudden, she grabs the back of my tank top and I yank myself away, saying, "What the heck, lady? Don't touch me." She takes a couple steps back, realizing that I'm not the kind of person you want to pick a fight with.
"Fine then. I'm finding a manager. Say goodbye to your job, you useless jerk."
I was already putting my earbuds back in, so I just said, "Whatever, lady. Bye." I grabbed my spices as she walked off in a huff and continued my shopping. I wasn't even wearing what employees at the store wear. Like, how could I possibly be mistaken for an employee? I seriously cannot stress enough how much I don't look like I work there. A couple minutes later, I'm in the next aisle over, and I see her again with a manager. I don't hear what she's saying because I've got my music on, but with the way she was pointing her finger, I'd imagine she was probably saying that I'm the one who didn't help her. They started walking up, and I took both earbuds out this time. Manager approaches me, and I hear the lady saying,
"He should be fired for yelling at me and threatening me."
Manager is like, "Yeah, he doesn't work here. He's wearing a tank top. That's definitely against dress code. Well, anywhere." She didn't like that answer.
"Then why is he stocking your shelves?"
I chime in and say, "I'm comparing calories in foods and picking the best ones to stay healthy. Maybe you should try it sometime. You definitely look like you need it." She stands there for a moment with this expression on her face that looked like her brain didn't process what I just said. Then she got surprisingly calm. It was getting kind of pathetic at that point, at least I thought so, but the manager actually seemed to side with her and said, "Still, I can't have anyone assaulting people in my store." Whoa, what? I must have missed the part where she said that I had assaulted her, so I asked him to repeat himself, and he explains that it is a criminal offense to assault someone and that the police could get involved. Lady goes from upset to real smug, like I'm about to get it. "Good," I said. "Call them down here. I'll wait." I know this store has security cameras on every aisle, and I'm so sick of people like her getting away with this level of entitlement that I really did wait. Police show up a few more minutes later. We go back to the office in the store, and they're really grilling me, asking me why I would attack someone, if I was on any drugs, etc. I'm kinda used to this treatment. People take one look at me and just assume I'm some meathead bodybuilder with roid rage. I answer all their questions by saying, "Look at the security footage. It'll answer all your questions." The more I said it, the more frustrated they got. Finally, they leave the room. I just wait there patiently for about 45 minutes, then they come back and apologize. "The manager told us you assaulted her. We should have checked the footage, but you do fit the profile." I then say, "Why? Because I have bigger muscles than most people? Is that a crime?" They know they can't really say or do much about it since they made some pretty big assumptions. "If you'd like, you can press charges against her since she did grab you according to the security footage." And you know what? I said that I would like to press charges. Normally I don't like to waste my time dealing with courts, but hours of my day were already wasted today, and I want her to know that she can't get away with it. A few minutes later, the manager offers to let me just go home with my groceries for free, probably a bit scared that I might sue the store for discrimination or something since I was so ready to press charges on the lady. On my way out, I saw them putting her into the back of a police car and she was screaming at the officers. I've already talked to an attorney who's in the process of obtaining the security footage. Court date is going to be in March, but should be pretty straightforward since the evidence is in my favor. I've never actually had to press charges like this before, so I have no idea what to expect. All I know is that even if she only ends up getting fined $1 or has to do even a minute of community service, I'll have a smile on my face. Anyways, that's been my crazy day. I know there are similar stories here of crazy Karens and stuff, and I always thought they were entertaining and would sometimes even think about what I'd do in a similar situation. My reaction certainly wasn't what I thought it would be though, and it wasn't as entertaining being on the receiving end of the story. At least I got some free groceries out of it though. Speaking of groceries, where do you get your groceries from? Please let us know.
Kroger all day, every day, bruh.
Your grandmother made the wraps, so I deserve them. Just remembered this, but it happened a couple of weeks ago. My mother's mother, Grandma, passed a good 15 years ago. She was so sweet and loved to knit and crochet. She taught me the basics of knitting, but nothing more. When my mother was pregnant with me, and later my brother, she had made 3 wraps, a white, pink, and a blue one. My mother used them for me and my brother and kept them. When my brother's girlfriend was pregnant with their first, they weren't interested. My mom showed them to me and asked if I wanted them. I loved them and said I did. Around 4 years ago, a cousin of mine got pregnant. She's the daughter of my father's sister, so no blood relation to my grandma. This was around the same time my brother and sister-in-law were expecting their first. My cousin wanted homemade wraps and blankets. My aunt/her mother remembered that my grandma did knit and crochet when she was alive, and she remembered that my mother had some wraps. So they called my mom and tell her the good news. My mom congratulated them and asked the usual questions. Then aunt and cousin asked if my mother still had those wraps. My mother confirmed this. Then the gates of heck opened. Cousin then said that she would love to have them. My mother replied that she was keeping them for my future children. They both scoff and indicate that such a thing might not happen for some years. My mother doesn't change her mind. Then aunt says that she should give them because they are family and this is a family heirloom. My mother was upset, as during her marriage to my dad, still going strong, they never seemed to respect her. They are never rude to their face, but there were loads of double standards in which my mom always has to do something but not getting the same thing back. She told them that the wraps were indeed family heirlooms, her family to be exact, and hung up. Other aunts called and started to say and demand that she gave up the wraps. My mother didn't budge. She was willing to give a gift, but she was not willing to give these as she knew how much these wraps meant to me. Then my father was called. My father is a very calm man who doesn't take sides if he's not involved, but he tore every aunt that called a new one about this. As the only living son and very respected member, they listened. They stopped and I got to use the blue and white wraps for my son. I'm pregnant again, almost 30 weeks. All the family knows. Cousin contacted me through the book face and said that she was pregnant too. Guess where this is going? So I congratulate her and ask the usual questions. She only answers that she is 20 weeks and then says that she needs them and wants the wraps, saying my kid will be 10 weeks old by that time and won't need them anymore. My due date is in the end of March, hers is May. Taking this into account, I say that she won't need them either. The wraps are warm, and since her due date is in May, it might be too warm already for the wraps. She calls me selfish and says that she has a right. I remind her of the fact that she didn't know my grandma, and simply because she wants something doesn't mean she gets it. She hurls some other insults my way before I block her. Her mother is the next to contact me and berates me, tells me that it's her daughter's turn and that I was being selfish. Since I had already guessed that aunt would contact, I had decided to go through their social media. Cousin was showing off a wonderful set of figurines. Nothing too expensive, but still beautiful. But one picture with the caption of, "So proud to have my grandma's set." I know this set is from her father's side of the family. So I told aunt that I wanted that set in exchange. Cue the remarks that I'm a selfish jerk, plus more colorful words, and about my audacity to claim that, and that it wasn't even from our side of the family. Cue my evil grin in response. Then how in the heck do you have the nerve to demand and claim something that isn't from your side of the family? If you and cousin can demand this from someone who you didn't know and vice versa, who isn't family, then don't be surprised that people take the same path as you do. It has been blissfully silent from those two. My parents had to laugh when I showed them the exchange. I had some aunts call me to ask what happened and if it was really such a problem to just give them the wraps. I sent screenshots of the conversation and they seemed to agree with me. Am I the jerk for telling my wife to get over herself or I'll go to my son's wedding without her? It's a bit of a complicated situation right now. My wife and I got married 13 years ago. I had a son from my previous marriage who was 15 at the time, and my wife had a daughter who was also 15. The kids were already older, and we never believed in pushing them to bond if they weren't interested in that. They had their own separate lives before we married, so there was no point in forcing them into something. I'm guessing you all know where this is going. 2 years ago, my son and stepdaughter, now both 28, sat us down and confessed that they have been dating for over a year. It was a bit strange for me hearing this, but I was respectful of their relationship, although it did take a while for it not to feel weird for me anymore. I did always consider my stepdaughter like my own, and we're very close. My wife was upset at first, but she worked it out by believing they would break up eventually. Now that they have announced they're engaged and plan to have a small wedding in a couple months, my wife is furious. All phone calls to her daughter have been my wife demanding they break up and keeps telling her it's not natural. This has upset them both, and my wife declared she's not going to their wedding. We had a huge fight because I couldn't believe she would refuse to go to her own daughter's wedding over this. It's not like this came out of nowhere. They've been in a serious relationship for years, so she's had time to get over whatever weirdness she feels about it. I finally told her that she needs to get over herself, and if she refuses to go, then I will simply go without her. She's now mad at me for not having her back on this and acting like what she feels doesn't matter. My wife says she's allowed to not approve of their marriage, and as her husband, she thought I would have her full support on this, so she feels in a way betrayed that I'm not taking her feelings into consideration. But it's also my son's wedding, and I would never miss it. Things are very tense, and she's still telling me she's hurt by my actions and that I would willingly go to something she's not comfortable with. I'd like to know if I'm being the jerk for perhaps being too dismissive of my wife's feelings about this. I understand why she feels weird, but like I said, she's had time to get over it, so I don't know. Well, who do you agree with, OP or his wife? Please let us know.
Offer to divorce her so they won't be step-siblings anymore. Maybe then she'll get over herself.
That total just doesn't seem right. I work in a store that also has a photo printing service. This incident happened a few weeks ago during peak holiday season. A lady and her husband came in to use the self-service photo kiosk and print-offs. We'll say 173 photos. While they're printing, she shops around while her pictures are printing and picks out one item. I don't remember what it was, but we'll say it was a chapstick. It was something less than $4. Once her photos are done printing, she brings the pictures plus her chapstick up to the counter and hands me a coupon for $1 off healthcare items. Now, we're really busy, and the way our system works, you have to scan a barcode for 4x6 photos and enter the quantity to make the system calculate the total. The max you can enter is 99, so if it's more than 99, you have to scan it a second time and do the math manually to calculate the difference. There's a huge line, so I really didn't feel like taking the extra 5 seconds to figure it out. Usually when I do this, I'm on the side of caution and intentionally undercalculate by a couple photos to avoid someone coming back and saying I overcharged them. So I scan it once for 99, then a second time for like 40. I'll admit, that was my mistake, but it was the holidays and I was feeling generous. Shouldn't have done that. I scanned the chapstick and the coupon. The coupon rejects because chapstick doesn't qualify as a healthcare item. I explained that we can't use that coupon, and her husband immediately says, very aggressively, "I am a lawyer. If you're going to make coupons like this, they need to specify what qualifies and what doesn't, blah blah blah." I'm like, okay, no problem. We'll override that for you. So I void the transaction and re-ring. But this time, I take my time to make sure I ring them for exactly the amount of photos they got. I override the coupon and tell them the total, which is now like $4 or $5 more than their previous one. I explain what I did on the previous transaction and that I did that because I was in a hurry, but for the sake of accuracy, I've done everything correctly this time. They huff a little bit and leave, and I go on about my day. About an hour later, the wife comes back and says her total doesn't seem right. I'm like, okay, let's take a look at the receipt. We go over it together. I say, okay, you got 173 photos. They're 39 cents each. I punch it into the calculator. That equals this much, plus your chapstick, which was $3.29, minus your $1 coupon. That makes your total this much. She says,
"Ha! But you charged me more than that. See?"
She points at her total. Yes, ma'am, that's tax, which is calculated at 0.07%. I enter that into the calculator, and we get the exact same amount on her receipt. She looks really confused. She frowns, and she says,
That still doesn't seem right."
Sorry, can't teach you math. But let me tell you, I will never cut corners to help someone out again. You were too important to take the first aid class? Have fun failing the test. This happened in 2018. My husband and I own a company that works with companies to provide doctors and nurses for factories and construction, OSHA and first aid training, and some other things. One of our major accounts is a power company. We not only provide on-site personnel, but also train them on first aid. This particular company is very strict on their health and safety protocols. They require all their crew to have an up-to-date first aid certificate, and they had shelled a decent amount of money to equip each of their sites, including their offices, with 2 AEDs, automatic electric dischargers. We were also required to provide an adjusted training for their staff and crews. Because of the nature of the job, we trained them in 3 hours/2 days schedule. 1 day was theory, because in a factory environment, instead of ABC, you EABC, with a written test at the end, and the next day was practical exam. We were scheduled for a 2-day training with this company. We were told it would be a small class, around 40 people, so I booked myself and our senior trainer. We arrived for the training, set up, get the roll call, and there was when it happened. Cast. We've got John, our senior trainer. We've got Karen, very important person. We've got me, and we've got Chad. As I said, this company is very hardcore on their health and safety. Except from the crews, they require every person that has even the slightest chance of visiting a power plant to have a current first aid certificate. This means we trained a lot of suits. As the room is filling up, I noticed John talking with a woman I didn't know. The conversation is heated, and I approach to see what's happening. Me. Is everything okay? Karen.
No, it's not. As I was saying to this man, I don't need to take the class. I did first aid in my previous company, and I have very important work.
Yes, you could actually hear the capital letters.
To do.
John. As I explained, madam, we follow the company policies about training.
But I already know everything.
Me. Madam, your manager booked you for this class. He probably thinks that it's more important than anything else.
No, I'm very high in the company. If you don't release me immediately, you may lose your contract.
At that point, she looked at us with crossed arms and a smug face. John, being a no-nonsense former trainer of the Army's Medic Corps, was ready to explode. Cue malicious compliance. There was a rule for the training set by the company that any personnel that could provide an up-to-date certificate could sign a waiver for the in-person training, but they had to take the test. I quickly provided this as an option to Karen. She wasn't completely happy, but she took it. I explained there were 2 tests, one in writing, one practical. She said fine and to notify her when it was time to take them. So, 2.5 hours later, she's sitting to take the written test. Immediately, I can see she's struggling, since most of the questions are tailored for an industrial setting. The test ends, and we collect the papers. At a quick glance, I knew she had, at best, passed with a very low grade. Despite her struggling in theory, she just came in for the test the next day. In this case, I knew she was going to fail. Along with their normal CPR, we had added an AED training, per company rules, and despite being a fairly easy and straightforward machine to use, she had serious trouble. So we pack up, go back to base. We rate the tests, and as expected, she was the only one who had failed both spectacularly. From the rest of the 39 people, only one had failed the written test. We sent the results and certificates to the company. Aftermath. Monday morning, just after we opened, I got a call from Chad, the company's COO. He is one of our major contacts because training was part of his responsibilities. The call went like this. Chad. Good morning, OP. I'm calling about the results of the training. Me. Good morning, Chad. I had a feeling you would call. Chad. Can you tell me why my assistant COO failed? Is Karen your assistant? Yes. Well, she said she had very important work to do and already had her certificate, and she signed the waiver. Of course she did. I could hear the frustration in their voice. Chad. Can we arrange a quick training for today? I want you to do it. Me. Let me check. It has to be a late one. Otherwise tomorrow at 10. Chad, after some thinking. Tomorrow then. See you at the office. The next day rolls up, and at 10 sharp, I'm at the offices. I'm led to a conference room, glass all around, and told to wait. A few minutes later, Chad and Karen step into the room. She looked chastised. She sat across me while Chad stood. Chad asked for the waiver, which I handed to him. He took a look at it and gave it back. Chad. As I explained when you were hired, you had to pass this training. The certificate you gave us was coming up, and you came from a different field. Now, do the training properly and pass it. It's one of the prerequisites for the job. Karen took the training properly this time and passed. Since then, she has never complained about first aid training again. Have you ever had to do training that you didn't really want to? If so, what was it? Please let us know.
I've been going to anger management training. I don't enjoy it, but people have been telling me I seem nicer lately.
Boss says we can't drive the work truck, so we don't. The title pretty much sums it up, but a long time ago, in a city not far away, I had a terrible summer job. Right after high school, my friend and I were looking for practically anything to make money, and his older brother told us about a job he once had, working for this guy washing windows. Now, this guy owns what appears to be a semi-legitimate business. He has a full shop/garage where he stores cleaning products, big fancy tubs that use sonic waves to wash blinds in, and a new, at the time, work truck. He's also a hardcore penny pincher and buys the cheapest, crappiest insurance he can on the truck. Initially, when we got hired on, he would meet us at the shop at 7 a.m., give us the work orders, and ride out with us for on-the-job training. After a couple of weeks, he would just leave the work orders in his office and then leave us to our own devices. Now, I want to preface with, we weren't lazy. We got paid hourly, like $9 an hour, but we were commissioned based on the number of individual windows we cleaned in a day, plus how many windows required a ladder. Those paid an extra 50 cents each. So if we knocked out 3 to 4 jobs in one day, we could take home approximately $14 to $15 an hour. Another important fact is that this was right after high school, so we were both 18, and for whatever reason, the boss didn't bother to ask or check our hiring paperwork to confirm this. Well, after a month or so, he finds out how old we are and has a come apart. Turns out his insurance on his truck has a clause that anyone driving has to be at least 25 years old with a clean driving record, no DUIs or anything like that, or his monthly payment triples. So he makes it very, very clear to us that we are not to drive the truck, and if he finds out we're doing it anyway, he'll fire us and dock any bonus pay from our final checks. Legally, he can do that because it's bonus, not hourly. I need to drive home the fact that he was so delusional that he never paid attention to anything. So one day, we came into the shop and see a stack of about 15 jobs. However, he didn't schedule anyone else, never actually scheduled himself because he expected the shop to just run itself, except for the 2 of us that day. Cue malicious compliance. He liked to micromanage, but simultaneously never picked up his phone if we called him. So despite calling him numerous times to let him know we can't do anything, we end up just sitting in the shop and listening to the radio for most of the day. This was also only a year or 2 after smartphones came out, so things like streaming music/movies or playing games on your phone was essentially non-existent, unless you had a spare $1,000 lying around to buy the fancy new iPhone 2. Fast forward about 5 hours, and he calls one of us to see how things are going, how many jobs we had finished, and if we needed help to get anything completed. We explained that we had been sitting in the shop all day waiting for him to come in so we could get started. Well, at this point, he goes ballistic and starts just tearing us up, one side and down the other, about wasting his time/money and blah blah blah. Why didn't you call me? Who else is there? Has anyone finished any of the jobs? Needless to say, that was our last day there. But we threatened to report him if he didn't pay us for the time we sat in the shop that day, so we still got paid almost a full day's wages, and from what I heard, within a year or so later, his shop folded. So, win-win, I guess. Am I the jerk for blowing up on my fiance for taking and hiding my ties? Hi, I'm a 31 male elementary school teacher. Spending time with kids is a lot of fun. However, I have a ton of responsibilities as a teacher to do my job properly. To me, life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, and remaining optimistic and keeping a smile on my face for the kids is sometimes hard. I lost my dad 5 months ago. I wasn't giving my all to the job. The school I used to work in had awful rules, and I just couldn't adapt. I found a new school that I started working in the past couple of months. It's great. My current class is full of sweet, intelligent kids. I wear colorful ties at work. I got all kinds of bright colors/patterns like floral, geometric, dots, and so on. One tie can have several colors in it. The kids love them. They always make positive comments about them, and they notice whenever I'm wearing a new tie. I come up with new activities for them. We often sit in circles, and I ask the class how many colors the tie I'm wearing has, then ask them to name every color. They either name them out loud or just write them on the board, which is another activity to improve their writing skills. We do this daily. My fiance doesn't like that for some reason. She pays attention to clothes and buys expensive accessories for herself. She expressed that she didn't feel comfortable with my new style and that I looked like a clown with a plain formal shirt and colorful ties. I told her I'm comfortable that way and she dropped it. Last week was my birthday. She got me an expensive black tie and I liked it, though it made me look too serious. She told me I should wear it at work, but I declined. We argued about it, then we dropped it. The next morning I was getting ready. I opened the closet and all my ties were gone except for the ones she got me. I looked everywhere, then I woke my fiance up to ask her. She answered by asking why I woke her up at 5 a.m. Then she said she had put them in a box and took them to her sister's so I can get used to wearing the black one she got me. I was so mad, I told her I won't be wearing the black tie to work and she should bring back my ties. She argued that I have no taste. She said I was embarrassing myself and that I'm too old to wear these colors, and being an elementary teacher doesn't mean I was allowed to make a fool of myself.
People probably gossip about those ties.
I blew up on her and called her ridiculous and inconsiderate since she cares about what others say. Then I drove to her sister's and took the box back. Needless to say, I didn't wear the black tie, but the colorful one. I had a good time with class, but my phone was ringing and my fiance said I hurt her feelings and that she was just looking out for me. But I overreacted because those were just ties. Her sister agreed. Info. First time we had this small argument, I really thought nothing of it because I expected this to not be an issue. We argue about a lot, but we quickly forget about it. But this one is still there. Note, she's not normally like this. However, she thinks that I'm doing this because of grief and says she's worried about me. I get she's worried, but I wish she'd understand. I felt bad for yelling, especially after she cheered me up on my birthday. She spent the entire day with me. Well, who do you agree with, OP or his fiance? Please let us know.
I wish you'd wear some cool ties, Mr. Reddit. You always wear that stupid orange one.
You definitely haven't seen this video yet, so please come watch it next and we'll see you when you get there.
And huge shout out to Carolyn, our newest official channel member. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Join as a channel member today and we'll give you a special shout out in our next video. And to have us make any kind of video you'd like us to, just come visit us on Fiverr, link pinned in the comments below.